We've been tracking the fortunes of young people, and some new data about Gen Z college graduates of 2020 is just really disturbing. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. Just 50% of college class of 2020 has traditional full-time jobs 6 months after graduation. So if you were to say, okay, right after graduation, I'd be like, oh, okay. And the real problem is that it's such a precipitous decline from the normal 55% that you would see amongst 2019 graduates and more. It's never been this low, Krystal, in the last 5-7 years since data's been tracked in 2014.
Wow.
So that just goes to show you that, number one, if you're only getting 55% or whatever, what's going on with the college degree? But two, the drop has made it so this is actually the worst off college class ever in terms of full-time employment 6 months after graduation. And Joe Biden just restarted student loan payments. Many of these people are gonna be racking up mega high interest in terms of not being able to pay and looking for jobs. In many cases, they'll have to settle to go work in an industry or for something they didn't necessarily want to or study in. And really, it just shows you that, at the bottom of the sector for young people, they're just getting screwed every which way. You have kids eating outside in the cold with masks on or whatever, 9 feet apart. You have college students who, the disruption that I hear for exams and daily life is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Working class Americans who didn't go to college, the lack of ability to get training, apprenticeships, entry-level job, and then, I don't know, there's just a deep sickness for a lot of people who are very young. They have no opportunities right now.
Yeah, and they say to make matters worse, college graduates today also owe way more in student debt.
Yeah.
So adjusted for inflation, 2008, college grads owed $24,000 in student loans on average. Now that number is $36,000.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
That's a massive increase.
Yeah, that's
in over just,
it's not like wages went up
basically
that much.
a decade. Wages definitely did not go up that much. The other thing that I'm interested in here is, this number in terms of what percentage has found, full-time permanent employment. It doesn't include people who are basically in the gig economy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably another major shift and major trend that's been happening for a long time of employers moving from having a standard, employee-based workforce and trying to contract and subcontract and gig worker their way to do whatever they need. And I'm wondering if that's yet another trend that's been accelerated by the pandemic. I think it's very likely because you had so many people detach from the workforce that, this allows them to not have to really follow labor law. They have many fewer protections for workers who are contractors, quote unquote, independent contractors, versus if it's actually their workforce. And so for a lot of young people, rather than a generation or 2 generations or 3 generations ago where you get a job, my dad got a job out of college at the naval base as a civilian scientist. When he graduated college, he got his post-grad degree, he came back, he worked at the same job as his entire career until he retired 30, 40 years later. That's just not the reality. It's all precarious, it's all at will, it's all, gigs that you can get here or there to try to supplement your income, to try to pull it together. That means you don't have health care. It certainly means you're not getting a pension or any of those things that previous generations could also expect. And so you graduate into a landscape of precarity, and that's essentially where you end up existing your whole life. That's why when you look at millennials, they have much less in terms of wealth and assets than previous generations did before them at the same age. Why it's so difficult to be able to start a family, to be able to buy a home, to be able to have that sort of basic stability that used to be the hallmark of America. This is just one more sign of that, which was tremendously accelerated by the pandemic and few people are paying attention to.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, all of the data is really dystopian around young people, depression, suicidal thoughts, and lack of access to healthcare services, lack of job opportunities. Now, hope in terms of trying to do better in any way economically in the future is very only much there for a select group of people for whom the economy works quite well. It's everybody else who's just getting completely screwed. So it's just yet another data point there.
And if this
to
is how
look at.
college grads are doing, think of how non-college
That's what
grads
I'm
are doing,
thinking. I'm like-
which continues to be 2/3 of even
Yes.
young generations
That's
are
always
not
the
going
other
to get
problem.
a college degree.
We over-focus on college, but I always look at these, you have to pair young people together because, they're very much in the same boat. Like in terms of debt, consumer debt amongst young Americans who don't go to college is sky high. It's just not student debt. It's, usually you have to borrow money to make rent or borrow money in order to just fulfill your daily, activities or whatever. And you put that together and you've got a big bubble and problem. People aren't able to buy cars and not able to buy houses. They are living with their parents longer and longer. It's not just college graduates. They're having real problem finding actual opportunity and jobs in the communities they grew up in, meaning they have to leave, meaning they have to pay rent. They don't have a social support network. I mean, the country's just being ripped apart very, very slowly.
Yeah,
and
the
separating
promise-
out like this.
That's right. And you were still much more likely to have a higher wage if you go to a 4-year institution. But increasingly now you got to go to post-grad as well to get yourself a slot in, the middle class, which is increasingly separating into the upper middle class, which is doing well, but are terrified of falling out of their status, and everybody else. So, just another trend that has been accelerated by the pandemic that is not a good sign of where the country is headed right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll have more for you later. Hey, guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.